And then Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. So before we get
Robbery. Robbery.
Hang on.
Oh my gosh.
I thought this fight was close. I thought that Holloway won. But I don't think this is something that you and I have ever talked about, and I think it's important because we saw 2 split decisions on this main card. We have to have a discussion about what are we talking about between unanimous decision and split decision. Because let's be honest, while I agree with you and I thought Max Holloway won, it was still a very close fight. And it was a split decision. Is it that much of a problem to you? Like, if it was a unanimous decision, I think we would be all up in arms. But the fact that it was a split decision, does that alleviate your frustration a little bit? Like, how do we differentiate this? Because I think that's been a big problem, is we're not differentiating the fact that it was a split decision where it was really, really close to a unanimous decision where it was just Max Holloway definitely being the better fighter throughout. You could make an argument that Volkanovski won and I wouldn't have been mad.
I don't know. I feel like it just takes some of the heat off of the judges. You know what I mean? If it's split, I don't know. To me, this fight wasn't that close. I just felt like they gave way too much credit to like the 1 or 2 takedowns Volkanovski had.
Oh, that's what I did too. But I think knockdown. I think that matters a lot to the judges who can take a guy down and keep him down there for a few minutes.
I think it means more in this type of fight where it was, it wasn't like a dominant stretch in this fight. I think it holds more weight. But to me, it was like clear as day that Max won the first 3 rounds. Like clear as day, like no question. So just by that logic, like I don't care if he has a takedown in the 5th round. Like it doesn't matter. He already won the first 3 rounds. Like unless Max gets knocked out or gets submitted, like there's no debate. Like you can't outweigh a guy winning 3 rounds and just say, yeah, he had a couple takedowns towards the end of the fight, so that outweighs maybe a round where it was close. That doesn't outweigh it to me. If he wins the round, he wins the round. You know what I mean? Like, and to me, there was just no argument for Volkanovski winning any of those first 3 rounds. Like, yeah, you can say it's close. But
I thought the first 3 rounds were close. I still thought Holloway won the first 3 rounds, but I still thought it was close.
That's what I mean, though. Like, you can say it's close. That's fine. But you still, when Holloway wins 3 rounds, just because it's close doesn't mean the takedown means more. He still won the 3 rounds. You know what I mean?
I guess, yeah.
It's still winning the 3 rounds regardless of how close it is. Which is, I think, needs to be more of the focus is regardless of how close it is, if he wins a round, he wins a round. Like, but you're winning more of the fight than the other guy is.
But let's also be honest here and recognize that for it to be a split decision, which it was, some of the judges had to give one of those 3 rounds to Volkanovski. So is that where your frustration lies about probably more so the fact that there are some judges who did feel that Volkanovski won considering how close those first 3 rounds were?
You mean as far as like, obviously one of the judges scoring one of those first 3 rounds?
Yeah, because
like
I feel
in Volkanovski's favor?
Yeah, because I think the only way for it to be a split decision and for Volkanovski to win was for one of those judges to give Volkanovski one of those first 3 rounds more so than the takedowns itself.
Yeah, so that's great. I feel like it was more based on the fact that he was the champ. So if it's a little bit close, maybe we lean towards the champ's way, which I feel like we didn't get with the first fight. I feel like that one, Max won some rounds that he didn't get. You know what I mean? And I feel like being the champ, I think there should be a little bit of, if it's really close, maybe we lean the champ's way. Now, whether that's right or wrong is, a separate topic, but I feel like if it is really close and you really are like borderline deciding, you should lean the champ's way. Okay, which we didn't get with the first fight. I don't think. Okay, so the only way to me that you could judge one of those first 3 rounds in Volkanovski's favor is if you were saying, well, he's the champ, like let's if it's really, really tight and I'm 50-50, then we have to go, one way, rather than saying like, let's give it to Holloway, he's not the champ, like let's have a new champ, which is I feel like where a lot of the stigma of like, I don't know, favoritism comes from, where like we tend to lean towards the champ's way. We tend to. Which is my beef with both these fights, is because Max didn't get it, I don't feel like, in the first round, or in the first fight, excuse me. And I felt like Volkanovski got it this time.
Because I think the point here is not necessarily the takedowns in the last 2 rounds. I think we can both agree that Volkanovski won the 4th and the 5th. But in terms of the first 3, I felt that Holloway won, but I felt it was close. And I felt there was a case that one of the few of the judges, or I guess one of them, made the decision to say Volkanovski won one of those first few rounds, or the first 3. And that's where I think the problem is. The problem is not necessarily the last 2 rounds, it's what happened in those first 3 and how the judges scored those first 3 rounds that really kind of set a fire along this fight for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's just what I mean, though. I just feel like unanimously we all, like UFC fans as a whole, or anyone who watched this fight as a whole, really probably thought it was like, I would guess like 95% of people thought that Max won the first 3 rounds, which is why it's frustrating, because like it wasn't like it was like really, I don't think it was like really debatable amongst a lot of people, the first 3 rounds at least. So, and then you have Dana come out and saying, like, I really am questioning what those refs were like. The judges were thinking. You know what I mean? Like, even Dana's coming out and saying it, like, and Dana never does that. So it's
no, he does do that. He does.
Even adds more, like problems with. I don't know.
Even with that, I felt a little weirded out by that, because I was like, and this is probably some of my weird thought process about unanimous versus split and how we quantify it. But even when he came out and questioned, I was like, you do realize that it was a split decision. That was kind of part of my issue. Not saying that I disagree. I agree that Max should have won. I agree that Max won the first 3 rounds. I totally 100% agree. But again, I still preference this by saying those first 3 rounds were still quite close. So because it was a split decision, I thought it was a little strange. Because
I know, but that type of logic is why I feel like it gets in trouble, though. Because I feel like you're almost just like allowing these sort of things to happen if you're not nipping it in the bud and saying like, listen, regardless of it being close or not, like I said, like 95% of people, like it wasn't like 60 and 40. It was like 90, like almost consensus, like people, everyone watching thought. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, it's split, but like that's taken away from the bigger issue. Like, I just feel like that type of argument just allows this to kind of slip under the rug when we should be like wondering like, okay, how can you score one of those first 3 rounds in Volkanovski's favor? Like, where's the logic behind that? Which is what we should be asking. You know what I mean?
I think this also brings up a wider discussion, of course, as we've always had, about the judges and how many judges should be there, and it brings up that bigger discussion.